Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to this new series, and please welcome my guest for this episode, New York Post NFL reporter Ryan Dunleavy. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Good. How you doing?
Yeah, good. I'm guessing you were traveling back yesterday?
I was traveling back from Houston. Yep.
Fun flight? Okay flight?
I was out of my seat at some points. The turbulence was a little rough. I'm not a big fan of turbulence, but otherwise it was fine. It was cool to be to see the starters play. That's what the preseason is about. You want to be at the game where the starters play. And it's the crazy thing is we always say, like, it doesn't matter if it goes poorly like it did for the Giants. And then if it goes well, you're like, oh, well, that sets a good tone for the season. So you can't really miss in the preseason. It's like if it goes well, then it's a good sign. And if it goes poorly, it doesn't matter.
Fantastic. So this is a new series we're doing with fans, beat writers, content creators, and more. So we've got 5 questions for you and then a quick fire round at the end. So we'll get straight into this. So first of all, just a little bit about yourself. How did you get into sports journalism and how long have you now been covering the Giants?
So I got into sports journalism because it was the only thing I wanted to do when I was a kid. I figured out pretty quickly that I wasn't going to be able to play professional sports and I wasn't going to be able to afford to go to professional sports to buy tickets. So how do I get to these games for free? And I liked writing. I was a huge sports fan. I loved playing sports. So for, I don't know, as long as I can remember, like 5th, 6th grade, this is what I wanted to do. So went to college thinking about it, journalism programs, daily newspapers, got part-time jobs when I was in college while other people were partying, and just kind of worked my way up to where I am now. I started covering the Giants in 2018 for the Star Ledger, which is New Jersey's largest paper, in 2018. And then I went over to the Post in 2019.
So, for a fair while now, obviously not the fun years, but, there's something.
That's what, yeah, exactly. When I got there is when they started to make that downturn, right? So like, and before that, I covered Rutgers football, and anybody in your audience who knows Rutgers football knows they've had their hard times too. So like, I don't know, my career writer record is probably like 50 games under 500.
So if we talk about Hard Knocks a little bit, so the Giants were on Hard Knocks this year. Now that it's over, do you know what the overall feeling was in the building about how that went down and how that was perceived?
Yeah. So in the building, it's a sense of relief that it's over. They're glad they did it because they feel like it showed the level of thought process that goes into their things, that they're not just winging things like was kind of the perception under Dave Gettleman as general manager. The results haven't been great, but their processes are generally well-received processes in the NFL. They got to get the results better at the end, but their lines of thinking match up with the smart teams in the NFL. It showed that John Mara is not a Bigfoot owner. He puts in his input, but doesn't trample his football people, which is a common perception among some Giants fans, is that like he gets in the way. And it showed very clearly that if he had his way, Saquon Barkley would still be on the Giants. If he had his way, Odell Beckham might still be on the Giants. So I think it showed some things. Were they, are they glad it's over? Yes. Was it a little more transparent than probably they wanted to be? Yes. There was a point, I think, in which their whole draft board was revealed, including their color coding system. I bet you they wish they could have that back. That'll probably scare off some teams from doing it. I thought it was a great series. I thought it was good insight. I thought it showed some of their people in really good lights. And I think it backed up a lot of stuff that me, the New York Post, and other beat writers have reported along the way. So it shows we've got good intel on this beat.
Yep. And the back page was shown in one of the shots as well, wasn't it?
It was the New York Post back page. What the Giant, I think I tweeted at one point, you want to know what the Giants are reading about themselves? It's the New York Post. So, yeah.
It was it was an amazing series. We had to jump through a few hoops to watch it over here, but we were able to do so. And one thing we really liked is it really did kind of show that family mentality that the Giants are quite well renowned for. And you saw that kind of in and out through the series. Last season, challenging, slow start, injuries to major players. What's the general mood around the front office heading into this season?
Is that they had to do a lot of things differently. So if you're at practice every day like I am, they've taken a much more serious or intense approach to this preseason. Last year, I think when Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll got hired, they had a long-term plan. And I think after the first year of 2022, when they looked like some of the smartest guys in the NFL and they went to playoffs with a roster that wasn't very talented, I think they broke a little bit from their plan, and they thought they were closer than they really were. And, they end up making the Darren Waller trade and tagging Saquon and paying Daniel a lot of money. And I think they maybe broke from some of the things they were first expecting because success came faster than they were. And they got a reality check last year. And I think now they're kind of going back to their roots of what they saw. And it's tough in the NFL. It's not a long-term plan business. And in year 3 to be looking at it as starting from scratch is a tough sell. But I think they've done a lot of things differently. They had it relatively for the NFL easy training camp last year. They've been grinding away in 11-on-11 periods this year. I think they got smacked in the mouth by the Cowboys week 1 and never really recovered from it. And I don't think they're going to allow themselves to be surprised by the intensity of the regular season this year.
Thank God for that, because we were in a casino at 1 a.m. in the morning watching that Cowboys game, and it was not pretty. They've obviously shown
you could have went home by 1:15 if you were there at 1 a.m. Yeah.
One of us did. One of us did. One of us just went, you know what? I can't.
Yeah.
I think it was Shane on the podcast turned around, Gano lined up to take the field goal, and he went, I'm going to go to the toilet because this is automatic, and would not believe me when I told him what had happened when he came back.
And the craziest part is that field goal is when Andrew Thomas hurts his hamstring, stays in the game to the end of the third quarter, and then doesn't play for the next, whatever it is, 7 or 8 games. And if you want to talk about turning points in the season, that's about as early a turning point as you can have. Is blocked field goal changes that game. You lose maybe your most irreplaceable player, and good night on the season, in the first quarter of week 1.
Yeah, not nice at all. You sort of touched on the intensity of the training camp. It does seem that there's a new mentality with the team, especially after the fracas, shall we say, with the Lions over a period of 2 days. What happened there? Was that just a boiling over of tempers, do you think? Or was that just a case of maybe flashbacks to last preseason when the Giants got pushed around a little bit?
I think a couple things. I think joint practices are naturally intense, especially the first time that a team is going against a team that isn't themselves. I think there's a natural across the league intensity. I think you saw that happen with the Jets and the Panthers last week. So I think that's just a little natural. And then, yes, I think that was also specific to the Giants and the Lions. The Lions are one of the nastiest teams in the league, right? Dan Campbell is a bite your kneecaps coach. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a trash talker. They have big physical linemen on the offensive line. This is a team that wants to pound you into the dirt, right? They're not the flashiness of, say, I don't know, the Chiefs. So they want to bully you. And the Giants were bullied in joint practices before the 2023 season, and they were not going to allow it to happen. The players who were there from 23 still remembered it. They didn't want to have it happen. And Daboll, to my understanding, was big, leading into that day, before that day, like, hey, we're not going to get pushed around. It was a big point of emphasis of like, hey, we're going to hold our own. And look, they clearly weren't as talented as the Lions when you watch those play. That shouldn't be a surprise. They won 6 games. The Lions should have been in the Super Bowl. They clearly weren't as talented as the Lions, but they were as physical or as intense. And in the NFL, that can get you somewhere that can make up some of your talent deficiencies, which the roster clearly has.
Yeah, so we've obviously seen a lot of change this year. Coaches, players, just a massive overhaul really across the board. And then with camp, like we've just said, new intensity. What do you think the identity is of this year's Giants?
I think it's going to be an aggressive team. I think honestly, Giants fans who have watched the last 4-ish seasons, I mean, Jason Garrett's offense was not aggressive, did not push the ball downfield. Um, Mike Kafka's offense was not aggressive. And look, it's not that those play callers are not naturally aggressive. The Giants didn't necessarily have the weapons or the offensive line to be aggressive. Now they should have, and when I say this is a compliment. They should have an average offensive line. Not a good
Mhm.
one, but at least an average. And when you're talking about they've been hideous the last 7 years on the offensive line, they should have an
Yeah.
average offensive line. And they have fast receivers. Some of them are unproven. Malik Neighbors is unproven. I think he's going to be sensational.
Mm.
But Jalen Hyatt's unproven. Wan'Dale Robinson's unproven. But they're fast and they get separation. And Dayball, by nature, if you gave him a choice of starting from scratch, wants to be a push the ball down the field, run over pass play caller. I think that's why he, in his vision, he didn't need a $14 million running back like Saquon Barkley is, because that's not really how he wants to play. That's how he was playing because that's what they had by default. So they're changing the identity of the team, and I think they're going to be aggressive. I don't think I think it's going to be a stop and start inconsistent offense, but I think it will be marked by big plays. And that's, that gets fans excited and that can make up for some things. But I do think they'll probably be trailing some games, so that makes you more aggressive by nature. But I do think they'll
Mhm.
push the ball downfield and be far more aggressive than they've been in the past.
Which is good to hear. Now on Saturday we saw like the first glimpse of the first team offense against the Giants, and it was very much a mixed bag. Just two things I want to kind of touch on that. Firstly, the offensive line looked much improved. We actually saw like passing pockets and running lanes being opened, which were really nice for something that we haven't seen really. How much of that is Carmen and his introduction as the new offensive line coach?
Probably some. It's hard for me to put like a percentage on it. I would say some.
Mm,
He's a well-respected coach who has worked with Jermaine Illuminor and Greg Van Roten, the right guard and right tackle, the last 2 years. So obviously there's familiarity there.
mm,
Part of it is just better players. Like
mm,
Jermaine Illuminor is a better player than Evan Neal. He was drafted 7th overall. Well, he hasn't been good. So they upgraded at right tackle. Greg Van Roten at right guard is coming off the best year of his career at 33 years old. Is that replicatable? I don't know, but he obviously is, at least for now, on the up. Like
mm,
Andrew Thomas is healthy. He didn't play most of last year. So like anybody you were putting in was a huge downgrade. John Runyon Jr. is like a above average guard. They didn't, he's better than Bredesen or Glowinski or whoever they were trotting out last year. So like they've upgraded the personnel. They've upgraded the coach for at
mm,
least now. But like I always have a hard time blaming the coach. Like the Giants have had, I forget the number off the top of my head. Let's call it, I think it's 7 offensive line coaches and 5 assistant offensive line coaches since Tom Coughlin left. They're not all bad coaches, okay? Like the
mm,
offensive line is always bad. It's not always the coach. I always say it's more the players than the coach. So yeah, they had some clean pockets, and I think 4 of the 5 starters played 3 series together. Then Schmitz
mm.
came out, and 3 of the 5 starters played 2 more series together. So that was encouraging. But let's not forget too that as nice as the pocket was, Devin Singletary ran 10 times for 20 yards with a 10-yard carry in there. So they got to be a much better run blocking team than they were for in that short 1/2 sample size.
Yeah, absolutely. And then secondly, we were always going to touch on him. Daniel Jones, first few drives won't have helped the narrative against him from areas of social media. But I thought personally that he got better after the second interception. How do you think this season's likely to go with Daniel?
Here's the thing, and I don't mean to throw cold water on things, but yeah, he got better after the second interception, but the Texans subbed out their starters. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, he beat up on guys who are going to be on the practice squad in a couple weeks. So I mean, yeah, it was good to see him getting a rhythm, but like I don't know how much translatable that is to, to, yeah, it's better than if he still was bad, but it wasn't exactly, it wasn't exactly like, oh, he picked it up against, Derek Singletary and Derek Stingley and whoever the other starting corner is. But how do I think the season's going to go? I think he's going to be under a lot of pressure. It's the first time his job's ever really in jeopardy. The season, I think physically he's fine, and that's somewhere to start. But the decision making is going to be under high scrutiny. He's not going to have a long leash. There's an injury guarantee in his contract that the Giants can't afford him to get seriously injured in a meaningless game. So he's going to have to keep them competitive throughout the early part of the season to keep playing. And it's going to be all about decision making. I mean, it's really this simple. In 2022, he had the lowest interception rate in the NFL. The Giants played well. In 2023, even before he was injured, he played mostly bad and made a lot of poor decisions with the ball. And it's only a half. It's only the preseason. It might not matter at all because they looked really good in the preseason last year, and then that didn't translate. But nothing you saw Saturday could calm your nerves on Daniel Jones. It looked like a pre-injury repeat of 2023 when he's playing a little reckless.
Yeah, it's that mentality side of things. I don't know if it was just me, but I've noticed that I have read afterwards that Dable wanted him to get the ball out quicker and get the ball out quickly, and that was one thing that they were trying to hedge their bets on. But he did look like he was still not going through his progressions until he did once, and maybe that's just because he's not used to having time because he had time at points.
No, I mean that could, certainly. I mean, that's what they're gonna have to be. I do think, to your earlier point, it is gonna be a quick drop and throw offense. It's not going to be Daniel Jones idols in the pocket offense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate all of this. Let's go through the quick fire round. So this is just a bit of fun for us, just to get a little bit more information out of you that we can get on a quick fire basis, I guess. So, favorite other sports teams?
It's hard because I don't just cover the NFL, so I cover a little bit of everything. Let's just say I grew up a big Yankees fan, and I grew up a huge Knicks fan. I grew up in New Jersey. I grew up a huge Yankees fan, a huge Knicks fan in the mid '90s when those teams were like championship contenders every year. Those I was living and dying with those teams.
And obviously the Knicks, we went and saw the Knicks last year when we came over, and we all fell in love. So obviously the Knicks are looking pretty good for next season as well.
Yes, it's a good time to be a Knicks fan if you are one. The last 25 years have not been.
Right, best stadium. Now you can take this two ways. You can take this on a catering basis, or you can take this on the stadium.
You're making a joke, I guess, because the Texans had such a great all-time. They had like an all-time catering spread for the media.
Yeah.
It was really, really good. And I am a junk food guy, so like a ballpark stadium food guy. I don't need anything fancy. Give me a burger, a hot dog, a donut, ice cream, etc. The best stadium I've been to is Dallas is sensational. Vegas was all. I covered the Super Bowl last year. Vegas was awesome. I've never been to SoFi in LA. Atlanta is awesome. I'd say those are my three favorite. Dallas, Vegas, and Atlanta have been my three favorite. If I had to pick one, I'd probably say Vegas was the best, but I was there for the Super Bowl, so I don't know how real that was, but it was awesome.
And what about on the flip side? What's the worst stadium to go to?
Washington. It's not even close. It's not even, you don't even, end of story. It's the worst sight lines. It's the worst field. It's the worst crowd. It's the worst food. It's the worst.
I've got to say, I think you're the third or fourth beat writer we've interviewed, and everyone says Washington. Everyone.
Now listen, Giants obviously go there. I go there every year, so like it's fresh in my mind every year how bad it is. Versus like I've only been to Carolina once, and if that I don't really remember much about it. But if it was bad, I'd forget every 5-6 years or whatever. Versus Washington, it's like every time it shows up on the schedule.
So this will be an interesting one because you can take this across all sports. But your favorite game you've ever attended?
I was at David Cohn's perfect game as a fan when I was 17 years old for the Yankees. And if you're baseball fans, you know, there's only been whatever it is. How many MLB 30 maybe games MLB history. There have been 24 perfect games in Major League Baseball history, and I was at one of them. So that's a hard one to beat. Like I said, this year I was at the Super Bowl. It went to overtime. It's different when you go as a fan and when you go as a writer, because like as a writer, a great game means a lot of deleting of your story and a lot of revising and a lot of looking at your watch to get your story in on deadline. So it's great to cover awesome games. It's better to go as a fan and have a drink or two. Yeah, I would say as a fan, it's probably the perfect game. As a writer, it's probably maybe this year's Super Bowl, or I was at like I said, I'm a Rutgers alum. I covered some crazy Rutgers football games where they were like down 25 points, and covered a game where Rutgers somehow beat Michigan. Like if you're a college football fan, you know Rutgers has no business beating a program like Michigan. They did that for their first Big Ten win. Like that was pretty cool. Those are some of the ones I think that pop out.
If we go back to the Giants, who's the funniest Giant you've ever had to interact with?
Darius Slayton's pretty funny. Darius Slayton has us laughing a lot. I'm trying to think who else gives us a good. Adoree Jackson had us laughing quite a bit. He's a good guy who had us laughing quite a bit. Sterling Shepard could always give us a good laugh. Those guys are probably Slayton, because he'll be pretty honest and open and talk about pretty much anything, and he's always busting people's chops. He's pretty good. I'm trying to think years ago, like back in the beginning, like people always said Eli Manning was hilarious, but we never really got to see that side of him, that pranky side of him. Yeah, I would say those Adoree, Slayton, those are some of the guys. Like I loved Evan Ingram. I wouldn't call him funny, but I loved dealing with Evan Ingram. I'd say funny, I'd go Slayton probably, and Adoree Jackson.
So I know that a few people said Jihad Ward last year was a character.
That's a different kind of funny. That's an X-rated. That's an X-rated like intimidating kind of funny. Yeah, that's a different. He's a character for sure, but that's a different kind of funny than I was thinking of. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then finally, your favorite highlight from covering the Giants?
I mean, it's got to be the travel, right? I mean, it's got to be the travel and get to tell people stories. I mean, so like the travel is just an awesome perk, right? Like the joke among sports writers is like, I have this one really specific skill where I could type really, really fast. I could type 600 words really, really fast under pressure. And like, because of that, I get to travel the country. Like I've been to every major city in the world, in the country, and like, steak dinners and stadiums, and it doesn't feel like you're really working a day in your life. So that from a personal standpoint is pretty awesome. And then look, I get to tell people stories, right? Like whether it's a inspirational story, triumphant story, whatever it is, a sad story, whatever it is, like people trust me with their live stories. Like this is just one example because it's the freshest in my head, but like Giants rookie Theo Johnson grew up in an abusive household, and and his mom and him and his brother told me the story of what they went through in so much details, and how like a box of Mike and Ike's candy, if you guys know what that is, you can get it for like the dollar store in America. And she would take one box of them and split it up 6 ways for the siblings. And that was their dessert, like 7 candies each. They didn't have a lot they came from. And, his mom was on the phone talking about raising her boys, and she was in tears, 5 boys. And she was in tears as she was telling me the story. And somebody trusted me with that deeply private story of theirs. So that just telling people stories, how they got there, and hoping that people who are reading them can relate to them, whether it's that or something much more cheerful than that. That's what I like, gaining people's trust and telling their stories.
It's a great way to end this, Ryan. Great way.
Well, here's the way to end it. I put this shirt on. Come on. This is from an Irish pub with my name on it I don't have any relation to it, but an Irish pub with my name on it in New Orleans that I'm looking forward to going back to when the Giants go back to New Orleans. But I wore this just for this interview. I got to show it,
We appreciate that, and I'm sure that Kev, our resident Irishman, will absolutely love that bit. So I'll be telling him about it once we finish. But that is all the questions done. Thank you so much for joining me. We actually really, really do love the work that you do. We read your articles quite a lot. Obviously, as Giants fans, and podcasters, we try and ingest as much as possible, but we try and read as much as we can of your stuff. So we'll make sure to put your page to all your articles in the description down below, because more people should know, especially from a UK perspective.
I appreciate that.
No, thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, viewers. Please do make sure to like and subscribe and all that lovely stuff, and share this one around. It's been a great chat. Our social links are also going to be in the description down below. But until next time, let's go Giants.